He went to sleep naked. What he awoke to shocked him completely. Jake Matthews had always been a simple man who preferred comfort over formality. And on this particular night aboard the research station, orbiting a distant moon, he decided to skip his usual sleeping clothes entirely because the temperature controls had malfunctioned again, leaving his quarters uncomfortably warm. The station was small, with only 15 human crew members conducting surveys of the mineral-rich moon below, and Jake worked as a maintenance engineer, which meant he spent most of his days fixing broken equipment and dealing with technical problems that nobody else wanted to handle. He climbed into his bed around midnight, feeling exhausted from a 12-hour shift repairing the water recycling system, and within minutes he drifted into a deep sleep, not knowing that his life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. When Jake began to wake up several hours later, his mind was foggy and confused because something felt different in a way he could not immediately identify, and as his consciousness slowly returned, he became aware of several strange sensations all at once. First, he noticed that he was no longer lying on his familiar mattress, but instead resting on something that felt smooth and slightly cool against his bare skin, like polished stone or advanced ceramic material. Second, he realized that the air around him smelled completely different, with a faint, sweet scent that reminded him of flowers he had never encountered before, mixed with something metallic and clean. Third, and most alarming, he sensed that he was not alone, because he could hear soft breathing nearby and feel the presence of someone watching him closely. Jake opened his eyes slowly, expecting to see the plain gray walls of his quarters, but instead found himself staring up at an arched ceiling that glowed with soft blue light, and the architecture was unlike anything humans had ever built. With flowing organic curves and surfaces that seemed to shimmer, he sat up quickly, suddenly very aware of his complete lack of clothing, and immediately looked around to assess his situation, and what he saw made his heart skip several beats in rapid succession. Standing around his bed were 4 figures, and they were definitely not human, despite having roughly humanoid shapes with 2 arms, 2 legs, and heads in approximately the right places. The beings were tall, at least 7 feet each, with slender builds and skin that had a pale lavender color with subtle patterns of darker purple markings running along their arms and necks like natural tattoos. Their faces were elegant and distinctly feminine, with large eyes that had vertical pupils, like a cat, and high cheekbones that gave them an aristocratic appearance, and their hair was long and white, flowing down their backs like silk. But what shocked Jake most was not their alien appearance, but rather the expressions on their faces, because all 4 of them were staring at him with wide eyes, and what could only be described as fascination mixed with something else he could not quite identify. One of them stepped forward and spoke in a voice that sounded musical and clear, and to his amazement, Jake understood her perfectly despite knowing she was not speaking English. "Welcome, human. I am Commander Lyra of the Calithian Survey Fleet, and these are my officers, and we have been observing your species for some time now." With great interest, Jake grabbed the thin blanket that covered the lower half of his body and pulled it up higher, feeling extremely vulnerable and confused about what was happening. "Where am I?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "And how did I get here? And why can I understand you?" Lyra tilted her head in a gesture that seemed almost amused and explained that they had transported him from his station using their matter displacement technology while he slept, because they wanted to meet a human in person for research purposes. "The translation you experience is done through a neural field that we projected into this room," she continued, "and it interprets our language directly into concepts your brain can process." Jake processed this information, while becoming increasingly aware that 4 alien women were standing around staring at him, while he wore nothing but a blanket, and the situation felt surreal and embarrassing in equal measure. One of the other aliens, a slightly shorter one with bright green markings instead of purple, stepped closer and spoke with obvious excitement in her voice. "Commander, may I ask him about his physical structure?" she said, "and our studies from distance observations do not fully explain the biological variations we detected." Lyra nodded permission, and the younger alien looked at Jake with intense curiosity that made him feel like a specimen under examination. "Is it true that human males and females have significant physical differences?" she asked. "And we find this fascinating because Calithian biology works very differently. Jake felt his face growing warm as he realized what kind of research these aliens were conducting, and he wondered if this was actually happening, or if he was having the strangest dream of his entire life. Because we have differences, he said carefully, and males and females look different in several ways. The four aliens exchanged glances and seemed to communicate something between themselves without speaking, and then Lyra approached even closer until she was standing right beside where he sat. "We have a proposition for you, human Jake," she said, and her large eyes studied his face with an intensity that made him nervous. "And we would like you to stay here as our guest for a period of time so we can learn more about your species directly. In exchange, we will share our technology and knowledge with your people," she continued. "And this could benefit both our civilizations greatly." Another alien with silver markings spoke up from the back, adding that they found humans particularly interesting because of their unusual social bonding practices and emotional complexity. Jake tried to think clearly despite his awkward situation and asked what exactly they wanted to learn from him. Lyra smiled, showing teeth that were slightly sharper than human teeth, and explained that they wanted to understand human culture, relationships, and biology through direct observation and interaction. "Your species forms what you call romantic partnerships," she said. "And this is something Calithians find both strange and intriguing because we do not experience such bonds naturally." Jake realized that these advanced aliens were essentially asking him to be some kind of cultural ambassador while sitting naked under a blanket, and the absurdity of the moment was not lost on him. "If I agree to help you," he said slowly. "And will I be able to return home eventually?" "Of course," Lyra assured him. "And we are not kidnappers, but rather scientists seeking knowledge, and you would be treated with great respect and comfort during your stay." The alien with green markings added eagerly that they had prepared extensive accommodations for him, including entertainment and food, synthesized to match human nutritional needs. Jake thought about his boring job fixing broken equipment day after day, and compared it to this bizarre opportunity to interact with an advanced alien civilization, and despite the strange circumstances, he felt a spark of adventure igniting in his chest. "All right," he said finally, "and I will help you, but first I need some clothes." The four aliens looked at each other in confusion, and Lyra asked why clothing was necessary when the environmental temperature was calibrated perfectly for human comfort. Jake explained the human concept of modesty and privacy, which seemed to puzzle them greatly, because Calithians apparently did not share such cultural practices. "Fascinating," Lyra said. "And this is exactly the kind of cultural difference we hope to study, and we will provide you with garments immediately." One of the aliens left and returned moments later, with a simple outfit made from smooth fabric, and Jake asked them to turn around while he dressed, which caused more confusion until he explained further. Once clothed, Jake stood up and realized that all four aliens were taller than him, and they watched his every movement with scientific curiosity that felt both flattering and uncomfortable. Over the following hours, Lyra and her crew asked Jake hundreds of questions about human life, ranging from what foods he enjoyed to how humans chose their partners and what emotions felt like to him. He answered as honestly as he could while also asking his own questions about Calithian society and learning that they were an all-female species that reproduced through a process he could not fully understand. As time passed, Jake began to relax slightly and even enjoy the exchange despite its unusual beginning, and the aliens showed him their ship, which was vast and filled with technology that seemed like magic. They explained that they had been studying Earth and its colonies for years, trying to decide whether to make formal contact, and Jake realized he might be participating in a historic moment. But what surprised him most was how the aliens reacted to simple human concepts like humor and friendship, because they seemed genuinely moved by ideas that humans took for grantedly. Ra admitted that Calithians had lost something important in their evolution toward pure logic and efficiency, and that observing humans reminded them of emotional depths they had forgotten. Jake found himself feeling unexpected sympathy for these advanced beings, who had everything except the simple connections that made human life meaningful. As the first day aboard their ship came to an end, Lyra showed Jake to quarters they had prepared and thanked him for his cooperation and openness. "You humans are more remarkable than we expect," nude conversations, and that maybe both species could benny.